The fluorescent lights hummed like angry wasps trapped in glass coffins. To 11-year-old Leo Sketch Anderson, the sound wasn't just annoying. It was a physical force that pressed against his skull, drilling into the soft parts of his brain where words lived before they could reach his mouth. He sat in the corner of the cafeteria, as far from the chaos as possible, his shoulders hunched over his sketchbook like a turtle retreating into its shell. Around him, 300 students laughed, shrieked, and slammed lunch trays in a cacophony that felt like being inside a blender filled with broken glass. Leo's pencil moved across the paper in precise, confident strokes, while his classmates saw a weird kid who never talked, who covered his ears at random moments, who sometimes rocked back and forth when things got too loud. Leo saw systems, patterns, the elegant logic of mechanical things that made sense in ways people never did. Today he was drawing a 1977 Harley-Davidson shovelhead engine, rendered in such meticulous detail that every pushrod, every valve spring, every cooling fin was anatomically perfect. He'd seen one in a magazine at the library, studied it for exactly 7 minutes, and now it lived in his head with crystalline clarity. "Hey, freak, what are you drawing?" The voice came from above, sharp-edged with malice. Leo's hand stopped mid-stroke. He knew that voice. Tyler Henderson, 12 years old, nearly 6 feet tall, with the build of someone who'd been held back a year and spent the extra time lifting weights in his garage. Leo didn't look up. Looking up meant eye contact, and eye contact with Tyler was like staring at the sun. It burned. "I asked you a question, retard." The word hit Leo like a slap. His mother had told him that word was wrong, that people who used it were ignorant, but knowing something intellectually and feeling it in your gut were two different things. The word still hurt. It always hurt. Tyler's hand shot out and grabbed Leo's sketchbook, yanking it across the table. Leo's fingers clutched at air, a small sound escaping his throat. Not quite a word, more like the whimper of a wounded animal. "What is this shit?" Tyler held the book up, showing it to his 2 friends, Jake and Marcus, both grinning like hyenas. "Look at this nerd drawing motorcycle parts. You think you're gonna be a biker, Sketch? Gonna join a gang?" Leo stood up, reaching for his book. It was the only thing that made sense. The only place where his thoughts could exist outside his head. Without it, he was just noise and confusion, and Tyler shoved him. Not hard, but unexpected. Leo stumbled backward, his hip catching the edge of the table. His lunch tray, carefully arranged, vegetables not touching the sandwich, apple exactly 3 inches from the milk carton, toppled to the floor with a crash that made every light in the cafeteria suddenly too bright, every sound too loud. The world tilted. Colors bled together. Leo's throat locked up, words drowning somewhere between his brain and his tongue. He wanted to scream, give it back, but his mouth wouldn't move. His voice had abandoned him, and he was sinking, drowning in a sea of fluorescent light and laughter. Tyler tossed the sketchbook on the floor. Then, still grinning, he stepped forward and brought his Nike sneaker down on Leo's favorite mechanical pencil, a 0.5mm pencil his mother had saved up to buy him for his birthday. Crack. The pencil splintered into 3 pieces. "Oops," Tyler said, his voice dripping with mock concern. "Guess you better be more careful with your stuff, freak." Leo dropped to his knees, gathering the pieces of his pencil with shaking hands. Behind him, he heard the lunch monitor, Mrs. Chun, a tired woman who'd stopped caring about anything except her paycheck years ago, bark at him. "Leo, pick up that mess and get out of the walkway. You're blocking traffic." "Not Tyler, stop bullying that boy." "Not are you okay, Leo?" Just a command to move, to stop being an inconvenience, to disappear. Leo gathered his things with mechanical precision, his hands doing what his mouth couldn't, functioning on autopilot while his mind retreated to somewhere safe. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere far from Tyler's laugh, from Mrs. Chin's indifference, from the hundreds of eyes that saw him but never really saw him. As he fled to the bathroom, the only place he could be alone, Leo clutched his sketchbook to his chest and felt the familiar weight of invisibility settle over him like a heavy coat. He was 11 years old, and he'd already learned the most painful lesson the world had to teach. Sometimes, even when you're screaming on the inside, nobody hears you. The school day had crawled by like a wounded animal. Leo had spent most of it in the nurse's office, not because he was sick, but because it was quiet there, and Nurse Patricia knew better than to force him to talk. She'd just pointed to the cot, handed him a cup of water, and let him exist in peace. Now, at 3:47 p.m., Leo stood at the corner of 5th and Madison, 30 yards from the bus stop, where his mother would pick him up in 13 minutes. But he wasn't looking at the bus stop. He was looking at the motorcycle. It sat outside Big Joe's burger joint like a mechanical sculpture, all chrome and black leather and raw, purposeful beauty. A Harley-Davidson Fat Boy, Leo's brain supplied instantly, cataloging details. Milwaukee 8-114 engine, 1868 cubic centimeters displacement, 6-speed cruise drive transmission, solid disc wheels that caught the late afternoon sun and threw it back in defiant sparkles. Leo's fingers itched for his pencil. The broken one was in his backpack, useless. But he had a spare, always carried a spare, and before he knew what he was doing, his sketchbook was open and he was drawing. The world narrowed to the scratch of graphite on paper. The V-twin engine took shape first, then the exhaust pipes, then the intricate details of the primary drive cover. Leo's hand moved with the confidence it never had when he tried to write words or form letters that teachers could read. This was his language, the only one that mattered. Hey. The voice was deep, rough-edged, like gravel being poured over sandpaper. An adult voice. An angry adult voice. Leo's hand froze. He looked up, and up, and up, until his eyes met those of a man who looked like he'd been carved from granite by someone who didn't believe in smooth edges. The man was huge, not fat, but big, with shoulders that seemed to block out the sun. His head was shaved clean, and a thick brown beard covered the lower half of his face. Tattoos crawled up his neck. Gears, pistons, chains rendered in black ink that looked like they might start moving if Leo stared too long. He wore a leather vest covered in patches, steel Spartans MC, across the back in letters Leo could read even from his angle. President stitched beneath it, and Rook embroidered over the left breast. Leo's throat closed. This was Tyler, but bigger. This was every authority figure who'd ever told him to be normal, be quiet, be less. This was that my bike. The man, Rook, gestured to the sketchbook with a hand the size of a dinner plate. Leo looked down at his drawing, then at the motorcycle, then back at the drawing. He nodded. Couldn't speak, but he could nod. Rook took a step closer. Leo's entire body tensed, ready to run, ready to disappear, ready to. Can I see? The question didn't match the man's appearance. There was no threat in it, no mockery, just curiosity. The same tone Leo's mother used when she asked about his drawings, the tone that meant I actually want to know, not I'm humoring you. Leo hesitated, then held out the sketchbook with shaking hands. Rook took it carefully, his massive fingers gentle as he examined the page. His eyes, Leo noticed they were gray, like storm clouds, traveled over every line, every shadow, every carefully rendered detail. Holy shit, Rook said softly. Then, looking at Leo, how old are you, kid? 11. The word came out as barely more than a whisper, but it came out. That was something. 11. Rook shook his head slowly. And you drew this from memory? Just standing here. Leo nodded. You know what this is? Rook pointed to a specific part of the drawing, the compensator sprocket. Leo's voice was stronger this time. Compensator. Absorbs vibration from the engine. That model uses a hydraulic tensioner instead of the old spring-loaded version. More reliable. Rook's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline, or would have, if he'd had any hair. You know your bikes. I read about them. And look at pictures. And sometimes, Leo stopped, unsure if he should continue. Sometimes what? Sometimes I see them and remember. Every part. It just stays in my head. For a long moment, Rook said nothing. Then he closed the sketchbook, handed it back to Leo, and squatted down. Actually lowered his considerable bulk until he was at Leo's eye level. The movement was deliberate, non-threatening, like someone approaching a scared animal. You ever seen a V-twin engine up close? Leo shook his head. You want to? Leo's heart hammered. This was a stranger. An adult stranger. His mother had rules about stranger danger, about not going places with people you didn't know about. But this wasn't just any stranger. This was someone who looked at Leo's drawing the way Leo looked at engines. With respect, with understanding, with the recognition that this thing mattered. My mom, Leo managed. She picks me up at 4. At the bus stop. Rook glanced at his watch. a massive chronograph that looked like it could survive a nuclear blast. It's 3:51. So we got 9 minutes. He stood up, walked to his bike, and straddled it. Come here. Leo approached slowly. Up close, the motorcycle was even more magnificent. The chrome gleamed. The leather seat was worn in places, showing years of use. This wasn't a showroom bike. This was a bike that was ridden, that had stories etched into every scratch and ding. This, Rook said, tapping the engine, is a Milwaukee 8. See these? He pointed to the cooling fins. More surface area than the old twin cam. Runs cooler, more efficient. His finger moved. And this is the throttle-by-wire system. No cable anymore. Electronic. Computer tells the throttle bodies how much air to let in. Leo listened, his earlier fear evaporating. This was language he understood. This was logic, system, order. Can I ask you something? Rook said after he'd explained the fuel injection system. Leo nodded. Why motorcycles? Of all the things you could draw, cars, planes, whatever, why bikes? Leo thought about that. Nobody had ever asked him why before. They'd asked what he was drawing, or told him to stop drawing in class, or mocked him for being weird. But nobody had asked why it mattered. Because, Leo said slowly, they make sense. Every part has a purpose. Nothing is random. And, he paused, searching for words. And they're loud, but it's a good loud. Not like school. School is chaos loud. Motorcycles are pattern loud. Rook's expression did something complicated. His eyes softened, his jaw tightened, and for just a second, he looked like someone who understood exactly what Leo meant. Pattern loud, Rook repeated. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. A horn honked. Leo turned and saw his mother's ancient Honda Civic at the bus stop, Sarah's worried face visible through the windshield. That's my mom, Leo said. Go on. Don't want to worry her. Leo started to walk away, then stopped. Thank you. For showing me. For not being mean. Something flickered across Rook's face. Something sad and fierce and protective all at once. Kid, I got a rule. I don't punch down. Never have, never will. You keep drawing those bikes, you hear me? You got talent. Leo nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips, the first genuine smile he'd had all day. As he ran toward his mother's car, sketchbook clutched to his chest, he didn't see Rook watching him go with the expression of a man who'd just recognized a piece of his own past in a stranger's eyes. But Sarah Anderson saw it. And as she drove her son home, listening to him talk more animatedly than he had in weeks about V-twin engines and compensator sprockets, and a man named Rook who treated him like he mattered, she made a mental note of the burger joint's location. Sometimes, she thought, angels wore leather and rode motorcycles. 3 weeks later, Leo sat on a rolling stool in the Steel Spartan's garage, his sketchbook balanced on his knees, surrounded by the organized chaos of motorcycle maintenance. The garage was a cathedral of chrome and oil, a cavernous space that had once been a small warehouse before Rook and his club had converted it. The air smelled of gasoline, metal, and WD-40, scents that most people found unpleasant, but Leo found oddly comforting. Everything here had a purpose. Everything made sense. It had started small. Sarah had driven Leo back to Big Joe's burger joint the following Saturday, half expecting the biker to be gone, a one-time encounter that would live only in Leo's memory. But Rook had been there, working on his bike in the parking lot, and when he'd seen Leo approaching with his mother, he'd stood up and introduced himself properly. Ma'am, I'm Jackson Miller. They call me Rook. I met your boy last week. He's got a gift. Sarah had been wary, of course she had. Single mother, special needs son, big scary biker. But then Rook had shown her Leo's drawings, had explained with genuine enthusiasm about Leo's understanding of mechanical systems, had said words that Sarah had been waiting years to hear from any adult. He's not weird, ma'am. He's just wired different. And sometimes different is better. He'd invited them to the club's garage, just to look around. We work on bikes there on weekends. Thought Leo might enjoy seeing the process. You're welcome to stay the whole time. Hell, we got a coffee maker and everything. Now, 3 weeks in, it had become routine. Every Saturday morning, Sarah would drop Leo off at 9 a.m. She'd stay for the first hour, working on her nursing coursework in a corner office Rook had cleared out for her, then run her errands and return by 2 p.m. In those 5 hours, Leo had found something he'd never had before, a place where he belonged. Sketch. Get over here. The voice belonged to Marcus Wrench Johnson, a wiry black man in his 50s with grease permanently embedded under his fingernails and an infectious laugh that sounded like a car engine turning over. He was the club's master mechanic, and he'd taken to Leo immediately. Leo hopped off his stool and approached the Softail Deluxe that Wrench was working on. The bike belonged to another club member, Tommy T-Bone Rizzo, and had been making a concerning knocking sound. "Tell me what you see," Wrench said, gesturing to the exposed engine. Leo studied it, his eyes moving methodically from component to component. The other members had learned to give him time, to not rush him, to let his brain do what it did best. The primary drive," Leo said finally. "The chain tensioner. It's loose. See," he pointed with a careful finger. "The chain has too much slack. That's what's making the noise." Wrench grinned. "Kid's gonna put me out of business." "You're exactly right." He ruffled Leo's hair, a gesture Leo had learned to tolerate from these men, though he'd flinch away from anyone else. "Want to help me fix it?" For the next hour, Leo assisted Wrench with the repair, handing him tools, holding parts, and asking questions that ranged from basic to surprisingly sophisticated. Around them, the garage hummed with activity. There were usually 10 to 15 members present on any given Saturday. The Steel Spartans MC wasn't a 1% club. They didn't run drugs or guns or engage in anything illegal beyond the occasional speeding ticket. They were working-class guys who loved motorcycles, mechanics, construction workers, a few veterans, one accountant who looked hilariously out of place in his leather vest but could outride half the club. And now, apparently, one 11-year-old autistic kid who could draw better than most professional artists and could diagnose engine problems by sound alone. "Yo, Sketch," called out Jimmy Shotgun Martinez, a stocky Hispanic man with a gap-toothed smile and arms covered in military tattoos. "What do you think of this?" He held up a custom gas tank he'd been painting, a deep metallic blue with silver tribal flames. Leo tilted his head, studying it. "The flames are good," he said honestly, "but the blue is too dark. It'll look black at night. You should add pearl white to the base coat. Make it brighter." Shotgun blinked, then laughed. "Damn, kid. You're right. How'd you know that?" Leo shrugged. "Colors work like mechanical systems. They mix in predictable ways. This kid," Shotgun said to nobody in particular, "is going to be designing custom bikes while we're all in nursing homes." Rook emerged from his office, carrying a box of pizza. Saturday's mint pizza for lunch. Always from Sal's. Always pepperoni and mushroom. Always with the pepperoni on one half and mushrooms on the other because Leo wouldn't eat food that was mixed together. "All right, animals," Rook announced, "food's here. Wash your hands. And I swear to God, T-Bone, if you eat the last slice before Sketch gets some, I'm making you walk home." T-Bone, a mountain of a man with a beard that would make a Viking jealous, raised his hands in surrender. "Wouldn't dream of it, Prez. The kid gets priority." They ate together in the garage's break area, sitting on mismatched chairs and an old couch that had seen better decades. Leo sat next to Rook, nibbling his pizza in small, precise bites, listening to the men talk. They told stories about rides they'd taken, bikes they'd owned, close calls they'd survived. They argued about carburetor tuning versus fuel injection, about which year Harley had the best engine design, about whether the new electric motorcycles were an abomination or the future. But they never talked down to Leo, never told him he wouldn't understand. When he asked questions, they answered seriously. When he offered opinions, even ones that contradicted theirs, they listened. "Hey, Sketch," said Danny Diesel O'Connor, a former combat engineer like Rook who'd served in Afghanistan. "You ever gonna ride one of these beasts?" Leo considered that. "Maybe, when I'm older, but I think I want to build them more than ride them." A craftsman, Diesel nodded approvingly. "World needs more of those. Less people who just consume, more people who create." "Speaking of creating," Wrench said, wiping pizza grease from his beard, "show these idiots what you've been working on, Sketch." Leo hesitated, then retrieved his sketchbook. He'd been working on something special, a custom bike design that existed only in his imagination. He'd combined elements from different eras of Harley design. The frame geometry of a 1960s panhead, the engine of a modern Milwaukee 8, a custom fuel tank shape he'd invented himself. He passed the book around. The men studied it in silence. "Jesus Christ," T-Bone finally said. This isn't just a drawing. This is engineering. These measurements, are these to scale? Leo nodded. 1 inch equals 1 foot. I calculated the weight distribution too. See, he pointed to notes in the margin. The center of gravity is right here. Should handle turns better than a stock softail. Rook met Wrench's eyes over Leo's head. A silent conversation passed between them. Sketch, Rook said slowly. You ever want to build this thing for real? You let me know. We could do it together. As a club project. Leo's eyes widened. Really? Might take a year or two, and you'd have to help with every step. But yeah, really. For a moment, Leo forgot about all the words trapped in his throat, forgot about Tyler Henderson and Mrs. Chun and all the kids at school who thought he was weird. For a moment, he was just a boy who loved motorcycles, surrounded by men who loved them too, and the future stretched out ahead of him with the clean, logical beauty of a perfectly tuned engine. Sarah returned at 2 p.m. to find her son smiling. Actually smiling, while helping shotgun mix paint for the gas tank they discussed. Rook walked her to her car, while Leo gathered his things. He's doing really well, Rook said. Fits right in. I don't know how to thank you, Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. He's been different since he started coming here. Happier. More himself. Don't thank me. Thank him for being exactly who he is. Rook paused, then added, Ma'am, can I ask, does he have trouble at school? He doesn't talk about it, but sometimes I see something in his eyes. Something hurt. Sarah's expression hardened. There's a boy, Tyler Henderson. He makes Leo's life hell. The school won't do anything because Tyler's father is on the board, and... She stopped, took a breath. I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this. Actually, Rook said quietly, I do. Because that kid you're raising? He's under our protection now. Whether he knows it or not. Whether Tyler Henderson knows it or not. He's one of us. And Sarah, looking at this enormous, tattooed, utterly sincere man, believed him completely. The sticker was small, just 2 inches across, but it might as well have been a target painted on Leo's back. It showed a skull wearing a helmet with the words Steel Spartans MC curved above it. Rook had given it to Leo last Saturday, along with a dozen others, telling him he could put them wherever he wanted. Leo had carefully placed one on his pencil case, another on his water bottle, and a third on the front cover of his sketchbook. At 11:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, during the transition from math to English class, Tyler Henderson saw it. Well. Tyler's voice dripped with mock amusement as he snatched the sketchbook from Leo's desk. Look what the freak's got now. You think you're tough, Sketch? You think some sticker makes you cool? Leo reached for his book, but Tyler held it high above his head. An easy feat given he was nearly a foot taller. Around them, other students watched with the detached interest of spectators at a car crash. Nobody intervened. They never did. Give it back. Leo's voice came out small, weak. He hated how weak it sounded. Make me, biker boy. Tyler flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning the drawings. What is this shit? You draw the same boring crap over and over. Motorcycles. You know what? I think you need some new material. He ripped out a page. A detailed rendering of Rook's fat boy that had taken Leo 3 days to complete. The sound of tearing paper was like a knife to Leo's chest. Stop. Leo lunged forward, but Tyler's friend Jake blocked him with an outstretched arm. Tyler ripped out another page. And another. Pieces of Leo's world fluttered to the floor like mechanical snowflakes. Mr. Henderson. Mr. Anderson. What's going on here? Mrs. Reynolds, the English teacher, stood in the doorway, her face set in lines of perpetual exhaustion. She was 3 years from retirement and had long ago stopped caring about anything except making it to that finish line. Tyler's demeanor changed instantly. The cruel smirk vanished, replaced by an expression of innocent concern. Sorry, Mrs. Reynolds. Leo dropped his notebook and I was just helping him pick it up. But he got upset and tried to grab it from me. I didn't mean to tear the pages. The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that for a moment even Leo almost believed it. Mrs. Reynolds sighed. Both of you sit down. Leo, pick up your papers. Tyler, leave other people's belongings alone. A pause, then. And Leo, try to be more careful with your things. Not Tyler, stop lying. Not Tyler, stop bullying. Just a command for Leo to be more careful, as if this was somehow his fault for dropping his notebook in the first place. Tyler handed back the sketchbook with a smile. As he walked past Leo to his desk, he leaned in and whispered, "Those bikers aren't here to protect you, freak. In here, it's just you and me. Remember that." That evening, Sarah sat in Principal Hendrick's office, her hands clenched in her lap, trying to maintain her composure. "I understand your concerns, Ms. Anderson," Principal Hendrick said in the tone of someone who very much did not understand and didn't particularly care to. "But from what I've gathered, there's been no actual violence. Just boys being boys." Boys being boys. Sarah's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "Tyler Henderson has been systematically targeting my son for months. He destroys Leo's property. He calls him names. Has Leo reported these incidents to a teacher when they happen?" Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it. Because that was the trap, wasn't it? Leo couldn't always report things when they happened because Leo couldn't always speak when they happened. When he got stressed, when the world became too much, his words just stopped. "Leo has difficulty with verbal communication under stress," Sarah said carefully. "It's part of his condition. You know this. It's in his IEP. And we make every accommodation for that," Hendricks said, his tone suggesting this was a generous concession rather than a legal requirement. "But you have to understand, Ms. Anderson, without concrete evidence, without witnesses willing to corroborate these claims, it becomes a he-said-is-said situation. There are witnesses. The entire class sees. Tyler Henderson is an honor student. He volunteers at the animal shelter. His father, Greg Henderson, has been an invaluable member of our school board and has donated generously too. So that's it." Sarah stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Because Tyler's father has money, my son doesn't matter?" Hendricks had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Nobody's saying Leo doesn't matter. But I would suggest that perhaps the issue is, well, Leo does have significant social challenges. Perhaps if he were more flexible in his interactions, if he tried harder to fit in." "Are you seriously suggesting my autistic son should try harder not to be bullied?" "I'm suggesting that the world isn't always going to cater to special needs, Ms. Anderson. Sometimes we need to teach our children resilience, how to cope with adversity rather than expecting everyone else to change." Sarah left before she said something that would get her escorted from the building. She sat in her car in the parking lot for 10 minutes, hands shaking on the steering wheel, before she was calm enough to drive. She didn't see Greg Henderson watching from his Mercedes SUV, his expression smug and satisfied. Didn't see him type out a text to his lawyer friend, "Handled the special needs mom. Won't be a problem." But that evening, after she'd tucked Leo into bed and he'd finally fallen asleep clutching his damaged sketchbook, Sarah did something she'd been considering for days. She called Rook. "I don't know what to do," she said, her voice breaking. "The school won't help. They're protecting the kid who's hurting my son because his father has money and influence, and I'm just a single mom who works double shifts to keep the lights on." On the other end of the line, Rook sat in his garage office, his jaw tight. What did the principal say exactly? Sarah told him everything. The dismissal, the victim blaming, the thinly veiled suggestion that Leo's autism was the real problem. When she finished, there was a long silence. Then, "Ma'am, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Leo is going to be okay. You hear me? Whatever happens at that school, whatever that piece of shit bully does, Leo's got family now. He's got us. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm telling. That boy sits in my garage every Saturday and helps my guys with their bikes and makes us all better just by being himself. You think I'm going to let some punk kid with a rich daddy hurt him? Not a chance." Sarah wiped her eyes. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Just keep me posted. If things escalate, I want to know." They would escalate. Both of them knew it. Bullies like Tyler Henderson didn't stop until they were stopped. And men like Greg Henderson had spent their entire lives buying their way out of consequences. But they'd never dealt with the Steel Spartans before. The art classroom at Lincoln Middle School was Leo's second favorite place in the building, after the library. It was quieter than other rooms, and Mrs. Fisher, the art teacher, was one of the few staff members who understood that Leo's brain worked differently, and that different wasn't bad. Today, Leo was working on his masterpiece. For 3 weeks, during every art class and several lunch periods, when Mrs. Fisher let him hide in the classroom to avoid the cafeteria chaos, Leo had been painting a portrait of the Steel Spartans. He'd sketched it first in his notebook, then transferred it to a massive 24 by 36 canvas that Mrs. Fisher had donated from her personal supply. The painting showed all 15 regular members of the club standing in front of their bikes, arranged in a semicircle. Rook stood in the center, one massive hand resting on his fat boy's handlebars. Wrench was to his left, Shotgun to his right. Diesel, T-Bone, Danny, Jimmy. All of them rendered in Leo's peculiar style that somehow captured not just what they looked like, but who they were. But it was more than just a portrait. Leo had painted their bikes with the same meticulous attention to detail he brought to his sketchbook drawings. Every chrome detail gleamed. Every leather seat showed its wear patterns. Every engine reflected light the way real chrome did. Mrs. Fisher had called it extraordinary and gallery-worthy. She talked about entering it in the district art competition, about how Leo had a genuine gift, about how this was the kind of work that won scholarships. Leo didn't care about competitions or scholarships. He'd painted it because these men had given him something precious, a place to belong. And he wanted to give them something back. At 1:47 p.m. on a Friday, with Mrs. Fisher temporarily called to the office to take a phone call, Tyler Henderson walked into the art room. He had two accomplices with him, Jake and Marcus, both grinning with the anticipation of violence. They'd planned this carefully, waited for the perfect moment when the art teacher was gone and Leo was alone. Leo was so absorbed in adding final highlights to Diesel's bike that he didn't hear them approach. Didn't realize anything was wrong until Tyler spoke directly behind him. Well, if it isn't the biker gang's pet retard. Leo spun around, paintbrush still in hand, and the world suddenly felt too bright, too loud, too wrong. Still drawing those stupid motorcycles? Tyler's eyes fixed on the canvas. Still pretending you're one of them? You know they don't actually give a shit about you, right? They just feel sorry for you. That's not. Leo's voice caught. Words were slippery things, especially when adrenaline made his tongue thick and clumsy. That's not true. Sure it is. Tyler picked up a jar of water from the supply table. The murky water Leo had been using to clean his brushes, full of dissolved paint in shades of gray and brown and black. They probably laugh about you behind your back. Look at the weird kid who thinks he's a biker. You're a joke, sketch. He walked toward the painting. Don't. Leo stepped forward, putting himself between Tyler and the canvas. Please don't. Tyler smiled. It wasn't the smile of a 12-year-old boy. It was something older, crueler, the smile of someone who understood exactly how much power they had and enjoyed wielding it. Or what? Then he dumped the entire jar of dirty water onto the painting. Leo watched in horror as the water cascaded across the canvas, turning the carefully rendered faces into streaks of gray, dissolving 3 weeks of work into muddy rivers that ran down toward the floor. The chrome bikes bled into the background. Rook's face became an unrecognizable blur. Oops, Tyler said, his voice flat with mock innocence. Something broke inside Leo. Not snapped. That was too clean, too sudden. This was more like a crack spreading through ice, a structural failure that happened all at once and in slow motion. He lunged at Tyler with a wordless cry, paintbrush still in hand like a weapon. But Tyler was bigger, stronger, prepared. He caught Leo's wrist and twisted, sending the paintbrush clattering to the floor. What's wrong, freak? Gonna cry? Leo tried to pull away, but Tyler's grip was iron. Jake grabbed Leo's other arm. And Marcus. Marcus picked up a bottle of red acrylic paint and squeezed it directly onto the canvas, adding insult to injury. Now it looks like a murder scene, Marcus laughed. That's what biker gangs do, right? Kill people. The paint dripped down over what had been Wrench's smiling face. And that's when Leo started screaming. Not words. Words had abandoned him completely, fled to whatever safe place they went when the world became too much. This was just sound, raw, agonized, the cry of an animal in pain. He pulled away from Tyler and Jake with strength born of pure desperation, stumbled backward, and his hand caught the edge of the easel. The canvas fell, landing face down in a puddle of paint water with a sickening splat. Leo dropped to his knees beside it, his hands hovering over the ruined painting, but not touching it, because touching it would make it real, would confirm that 3 weeks of work, of love, of gratitude had been destroyed in 30 seconds. His breath came in rapid, shallow gasps. His vision tunneled. The lights were too bright, and his clothes were too tight, and there was a ringing in his ears that sounded like the world ending. Meltdown. The word existed somewhere in the back of his mind, clinical and detached. He was having a meltdown. His body was shutting down, his brain overloaded by rage and grief and helplessness. He heard Tyler and his friends laughing as they left, heard footsteps approaching, Mrs. Fisher returning, heard her gasp of shock, heard her voice saying his name over and over. But he couldn't respond, couldn't move, could only kneel there beside his ruined painting, rocking back and forth, making small sounds that might have been crying except he'd run out of tears years ago. The phone call came at 2:23 p.m. Ms. Anderson, this is Principal Hendricks. I'm afraid Leo had an incident in art class. He became violent and destructive, and we've had to send him home for the day. I'm recommending a 3-day suspension for. What? Sarah's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. She was at the hospital, in the middle of her shift, and her supervisor was already giving her the look that meant this better be important. What happened? Leo destroyed a painting he'd been working on, threw art supplies around the room, and became verbally aggressive toward other students. Mrs. Fisher found him in a highly agitated state. Did you ask why he was agitated? Did you ask what happened before Mrs. Fisher arrived? Leo is currently nonverbal and unable to communicate, so we've had to piece together. From whom? Let me guess. Tyler Henderson and his friends. A pause. Ms. Anderson, I understand you're upset, but I'm coming to get my son. Don't you dare suspend him until I've talked to Mrs. Fisher and seen whatever evidence you think you have. She arrived 40 minutes later to find Leo sitting in the nurse's office, still rocking slightly, still nonverbal. His clothes were covered in paint. His hands were shaking. When he saw his mother, he collapsed into her arms and finally started crying. Mrs. Fisher told Sarah the truth. How she'd left for just 5 minutes, how she'd returned to find the painting destroyed and Leo in crisis, how she'd seen Tyler and his friends leaving with paint-stained hands. Principal Hendricks dismissed this as hearsay and circumstantial evidence. The official report stated that Leo had vandalized his own artwork during an emotional episode and would be suspended for 3 days. As Sarah led her sobbing, paint-stained son out of the school, she saw Greg Henderson in the parking lot, leaning against his Mercedes. He made eye contact with her and smirked. That was his mistake. Because Sarah Anderson might have been a single mother working 2 jobs to make ends meet, might not have had money or influence or a lawyer on retainer. But she had something Greg Henderson didn't, the phone number of a man who'd promised to protect her son. That evening, she called Rook and told him everything. When she finished, there was a long, dangerous silence on the other end of the line. Then, ma'am, I need you to do me a favor. Take a picture of Leo's painting, of what's left of it, and send it to me. Can you do that? Yes, but why? Because Monday morning, I'm going to have a conversation with the school. A very polite, very civilized conversation. And I want them to see exactly what they're protecting. In the parking lot outside the Steel Spartans garage, Rook hung up the phone and stared at the wall of his office. On it hung a photograph from 15 years ago, himself in desert camouflage, arm around a skinny kid in a military uniform. His little brother, Danny, not Diesel, his actual brother, also named Danny, who died at 19 from complications related to his cerebral palsy. Danny who'd been bullied his entire short life. Danny who'd never had anyone protect him until it was too late. Rook picked up his phone and sent a group text to all Steel Spartans members. Church. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Mandatory. We've got a problem to solve. The brothers would come. They always did. And Tyler Henderson was about to learn that some lines, once crossed, couldn't be uncrossed. Leo sat cross-legged on his bed Saturday morning, staring at his empty sketchbook. He'd started a new one. The old one had too many ruined pages, too many reminders of Tyler's cruelty. But his pencil hovered over the blank page, unable to commit to a mark. For the first time in his life, drawing didn't make sense. His fingers remembered how to move. His brain could still see the lines, the shadows, the mechanical precision of a V-twin engine or the elegant curve of a fuel tank. But between his mind and his hand was a wall of gray static, built from 3 days of suspension, 3 days of his mother crying when she thought he couldn't hear, 3 days of knowing that Tyler had won. A knock on his bedroom door. Leo? Honey, Rook is here. Leo looked up, confused. It was Saturday, yes, but he hadn't asked to go to the garage, hadn't wanted to face the club members, to see the disappointment in their eyes when they learned their talented kid had been suspended for vandalism. But his mother was opening the door, and Rook was filling the doorway, his massive frame somehow gentle as he took in the sight of Leo, sitting motionless on his bed. "Hey, Sketch." Rook's voice was quiet, lacking its usual booming authority. "Your mom said it's okay if we talk. That cool with you?" Leo nodded. Rook entered the small bedroom, his eyes scanning the walls covered in motorcycle posters and sketches. He pulled out Leo's desk chair, turned it backward, and sat down with his arms resting on the back, a position that somehow made him look less intimidating despite his size. "Want to tell me what happened?" Leo's throat locked up. He shook his head. "That's okay. Your mom told me most of it." Rook paused. "She showed me the picture of the painting." Leo's hands clenched into fists. He waited for the lecture, for the disappointment, for the speech about how he should have been more careful, should have protected his work, should have. "That Tyler kid," Rook said slowly. "He really did a number on it, huh?" Leo's head snapped up. You know? You know it was Tyler." "Course I know. You think I'm stupid enough to believe you'd destroy your own work? Sketch, I've watched you draw. You treat every line like it's sacred. You wouldn't vandalize that painting any more than I'd take a sledgehammer to my bike." Something in Leo's chest loosened, just slightly. The school said what the school wanted to hear. Because Tyler's daddy has money and you don't. Because it's easier to blame the weird kid than deal with the bully. Rook's jaw tightened. "But here's what they don't understand, Sketch. They don't understand that when you hurt one of ours, you hurt all of us." "I'm not really one of yours," Leo said quietly. "I'm just a kid who hangs around sometimes." Rook was silent for a moment. Then he reached up and unbuttoned his leather vest, his cut. In biker terms, the sacred garment that displayed his club's colors and patches. He held it up. "See this? This says President. Know what that means?" Leo nodded. "It means I decide who's in my club. Not Tyler Henderson. Not some school principal. Me." He pointed to another patch. "And this one says Steel Spartans MC. Know what the MC stands for? Motorcycle Club. Right? But you know what it really means? It means family. It means brotherhood. It means when one of us is hurting, we all hurt. And when one of us is threatened, we all respond." He held out his hand. In his palm was a small patch, the same skull and helmet logo that Leo had put on his sketchbook, but different. This one said Property of Steel Spartans MC across the top and had space for a name at the bottom. "I can't make you a full member," Rook said. "You're 11. That wouldn't be right. But I can do this. I can make you officially under our protection. You wear this patch, everyone knows. You mess with Leo Anderson, you mess with us all." Leo stared at the patch. "But I don't ride. I don't have a motorcycle. I'm not. You're an artist. You're a mechanic. You're a kid with a gift who makes our Saturdays better just by being there. That's enough." Rook's voice softened. "My little brother, he was like you. Not autistic, but different. Cerebral palsy. Kids were cruel. And I wasn't around enough to protect him. I was deployed, serving overseas, thinking I was doing something important. And he died alone, thinking he didn't matter." Leo had never heard Rook talk about his brother before. In the garage, there was a memorial corner with a photograph of a young man in a wheelchair, but nobody discussed it. "I can't bring Danny back," Rook continued. "But I can make damn sure that every kid like him, every kid like you, knows they matter. Knows they have people who'll stand up for them." He placed the patch on Leo's bed. "You think about it. No pressure. But Monday, I'm going to that school. I'm going to have a conversation with your principal and with Tyler Henderson's father. And I'm going to make it very clear what happens when you hurt one of ours." "What? What are you going to do?" Rook smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who'd been a combat engineer, who'd defused bombs and built bridges under fire, who knew exactly how to apply pressure to make structures collapse. "I'm going to talk. Very calmly. Very reasonably. I'm going to explain some facts about harassment, about liability, about what happens when a special needs student is systematically targeted and the school does nothing. I'm going to mention lawyers. I'm going to mention the media. I'm going to mention every single avenue of accountability that Principal Hendricks and Greg Henderson think their money protects them from. And if that doesn't work, then Plan B." Rook stood up, his head nearly touching Leo's ceiling. "But it will work, Sketch. Trust me. Bullies like Tyler, they're brave when they're punching down. When someone their own size pushes back, they fold like cheap lawn chairs." After Rook left, Leo sat alone in his room, holding the patch. The fabric was worn, soft from years of use. Someone had worn this before, probably one of the club's brothers who'd moved away or retired from writing. Now it was his. He set it carefully on his desk, next to his new sketchbook. Then, for the first time in 3 days, he picked up his pencil. The drawing that emerged wasn't a motorcycle. It was a portrait of Rook, standing with his arms crossed, surrounded by the other steel Spartans. Behind them, faint and sketchy like ghosts, were other figures, kids like Leo. Different kids. Bullied kids. Protected kids. An army of misfits, guarded by an army of brothers. Leo didn't know if Rook's plan would work. Didn't know if talking to the school would change anything. But for the first time since Tyler had destroyed his painting, Leo felt something other than helplessness. He felt hope. And in his mother's bedroom, Sarah Anderson listened to the scratch of her son's pencil and allowed herself to cry. Not from despair this time, but from gratitude that somehow, against all odds, her boy had found his tribe. Monday arrived with the inevitability of a coming storm. Dark clouds hung over Lincoln Middle School, promising rain that hadn't yet fallen but would, eventually, because that's what November did in this part of the country. Leo walked through the school's front entrance at 8:02 a.m., his mother beside him, Principal Hendricks waiting in his office to have what he'd called a re-entry meeting. The suspension was over. Leo was officially allowed back. He was also officially terrified. The patch Rook had given him was in his backpack, carefully wrapped in a plastic bag. He hadn't decided whether to wear it yet. Hadn't decided if making himself an even bigger target was brave or stupid. The meeting lasted 12 minutes. Hendricks reviewed behavior expectations and appropriate responses to stress, as if Leo had simply thrown a tantrum rather than having his artwork deliberately destroyed. Sarah's jaw was so tight Leo worried her teeth might crack. "We're glad to have Leo back," Hendricks concluded with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "And I trust there won't be any further incidents." Translation: don't make waves. Don't cause problems. Be invisible. Leo's first 4 periods passed in a fog. Teachers who'd barely acknowledged his existence before now watched him with wary expressions, as if he might explode at any moment. Other students gave him a wide berth. Even the kids who'd never participated in Tyler's bullying suddenly couldn't make eye contact. He was toxic now. Radioactive. The weird kid who'd been suspended. Lunch period arrived. Leo's stomach churned at the thought of the cafeteria, the noise, the chaos. Tyler holding court with his friends, recounting the story of how he'd defended himself against violent sketch. Instead, Leo headed for the library. The librarian, Mrs. Chun, no relation to the lunch monitor, had always let him eat there as long as he cleaned up. She was reading at her desk and barely looked up when he entered, just gestured toward the back corner where he usually sat. Leo unwrapped his sandwich. Peanut butter, no jelly, cut diagonally because horizontal cuts were wrong, and tried to eat. The bread tasted like cardboard. Everything tasted like cardboard lately. He lasted until 12:47 p.m. Then the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch and the start of 7th period. Time to move. Time to be visible again. The hallway was crowded, bodies pressing together in the universal middle school scramble to get to class without being late. Leo hugged the wall, trying to minimize contact, his backpack clutched tight against his chest. He didn't see Tyler until it was too late. Well, the criminal returns. Tyler stood in the hallway with Jake and Marcus, blocking the route to Leo's English class. Other students flowed around them like water around rocks. Nobody stopping, nobody interfering. Leo's first instinct was to turn around, find another route. But there was no other route. The hallway only went 2 directions, and Tyler's group was large enough to block the path. "Excuse me," Leo said quietly, trying to slip past. Tyler's arm shot out, pressing against the locker beside Leo's head. "Where do you think you're going?" "Class. I need to get to. You need to learn some respect, freak. You made me look bad with your suspension. My dad had to go to a meeting with the principal because of you." "Because of me?" Leo's brain struggled to process this twisted logic. "Tyler destroyed my painting, and I'm the problem?" "I didn't," Leo's voice caught. Words were slipping again, scared away by the proximity of Tyler's anger and the too loud hallway and the fluorescent lights that suddenly seemed to strobe. "You didn't what? Didn't cry like a baby? Didn't get special treatment because you're retarded?" Tyler leaned closer. "You think those bikers scare me? You think some leather-wearing losers make you tough?" And there it was. the real source of Tyler's renewed anger. He'd heard about Rook, about the Steel Spartans, about the fact that Leo had people who cared about him. Tyler couldn't stand it. Listen very carefully, freak. After school today, I'm going to be waiting by the trail behind the baseball field. You know, the muddy path nobody uses? And you're going to meet me there. Alone. No teachers, no bikers, nobody. Just you and me. Why would I? Because if you don't, I'm going to tell everyone about how you attacked me in art class. How you're violent and dangerous and the school should expel you. My dad has friends on the board. They'll believe me. Tyler's smile was pure malice. But if you meet me, if you let me teach you a lesson about respect, maybe I'll forget about pressing charges. It was a trap. Leo knew it was a trap. Tyler wasn't going to teach him a lesson. He was going to hurt him, possibly badly, somewhere nobody would see. But what choice did Leo have? If Tyler's father went to the school board, if they painted Leo as violent. Okay, Leo whispered. Smart choice. 3:30, the trail. Don't be late. Tyler and his friends disappeared into the crowd, leaving Leo standing alone against the locker, his heart hammering, his breath coming in short gasps that never quite filled his lungs. He spent 7th period staring at the clock, watching the minutes tick toward 3:30. Spent 8th period the same way. The teachers called on him, and he didn't respond. Couldn't respond. Was drowning in the certainty of what was coming. At 3:29 p.m., while other students flooded out the front entrance toward buses and parent pickup, Leo slipped out the side door and headed toward the baseball field. The trail was exactly as miserable as Leo remembered. It cut through a small wooded area behind the school's athletic fields, a muddy path that students sometimes used as a shortcut to the neighborhood beyond. The morning's threatened rain had finally arrived during 8th period, a brief downpour that had turned the trail into a slick ribbon of mud and standing water. Leo's sneakers squelched with each step. The trees overhead dripped. His backpack, containing his new sketchbook and Rook's patch, felt heavier with each yard. Tyler was waiting at the trail's midpoint, where a particularly large puddle had formed in a low spot. Jake and Marcus flanked him like guards. Right on time, Tyler said. I wasn't sure you'd show. I'm here. You said you'd leave me alone if you let me teach you a lesson. Right. Tyler walked forward, his expensive basketball shoes somehow staying clean despite the mud. Here's the lesson, freak. You don't matter. Your drawings don't matter. Those bikers don't matter. You're nothing. Before Leo could respond, Tyler grabbed his backpack and yanked it off his shoulders. Leo stumbled, trying to keep his balance on the slippery ground. What's in here? Tyler unzipped the bag, pulling out the sketchbook. Oh look, a new one. Guess I need to break this one too. Please. The word came out strangled. Tyler flipped through pages, found the drawing of Rook and the Steel Spartans. His expression darkened. You really think these guys care about you? You really think? He tore the page out. Then he tossed the sketchbook into the massive puddle. The book hit the water with a splash, the pages immediately soaking through, ink bleeding, pencil lines dissolving. Weeks of work. Gone. Again. Leo dove for it without thinking, his only thought to save what he could. His knees hit the mud, his hands plunging into the cold, dirty water, which was exactly what Tyler had wanted. The shove came from behind, violent and unexpected. Tyler's hands on Leo's back, pushing hard. Leo pitched forward, his face heading straight for the puddle. No time to catch himself. No time to. His face hit the water. His hands sank into mud up to the wrists. The cold was shocking, stealing his breath. He tried to push up, but Tyler's hand was on the back of his head, holding him down for just a second, just long enough to make it clear who had the power here. Then Tyler released him, and Leo surged upward, gasping, covered in filthy water that tasted of rot and earth. His clothes were soaked through. Mud caked his face. His hair dripped into his eyes. Look at that. Tyler's voice was gleeful. The swamp monster. Jake, you getting this? Jake held up his phone, recording. Got it all, man. This is gold. Leo tried to stand, but his feet slipped. He went down again, this time sideways, his hips splashing into the puddle. More laughter. More recording. Say it, Tyler commanded. Say I'm nothing. Leo's mouth wouldn't form the words. His brain was shutting down, overwhelmed by cold and humiliation and the visceral wrongness of being this dirty, this wet, this violated. Say it, or I'm posting this video everywhere. Everyone will see what a pathetic freak you are. The world was narrowing to a tunnel. The sounds of Tyler's laughter echoed strangely. Leo's vision began to blur at the edges, not from tears, but from something deeper, a protective shutdown that his brain initiated when reality became too much to process. He curled up in the mud, arms wrapped around himself, and simply stopped. Stopped trying to get up. Stopped trying to respond. His eyes were open, but seeing nothing. His ears heard, but didn't process. He retreated to somewhere deep inside where the world couldn't reach him. Tyler kicked water at him one more time. Freak. Come on, guys. He's boring now. They left him there. Time passed. Leo didn't know how much. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. The world existed in a gray static, his body present, but his mind far away in a safe place where there was no mud, no cold, no Tyler Henderson. Until a voice cut through the static. Jesus Christ. Leo? Leo. Footsteps, running, splashing through puddles. Then hands, gentle hands, careful hands, touching his shoulder. Leo, buddy, it's Wrench. Can you hear me? Leo's eyes focused slowly. Wrench's face swam into view, his expression horrified. Behind him, Shotgun and Diesel, all three of them in their leather cuts despite the rain. What the fuck happened? Shotgun's voice was tight with rage. Get Rook, Diesel said quietly. Get him now. Wrench pulled off his leather vest and wrapped it around Leo's shaking shoulders. I got you, Sketch. You're safe. We're here. But Leo wasn't safe. He was covered in mud and his sketchbook was ruined and Tyler had won and everyone would see that video. And a motorcycle roared in the distance, the sound growing louder. Closer. Rook had arrived. Rook had been in a meeting with Principal Hendricks when Diesel's call came through. He'd been laying out, in very clear terms, exactly what legal liability the school faced for failing to protect a disabled student from systematic harassment. Hendricks had been sweating, making notes, occasionally reaching for the phone to call the school's lawyer. Greg Henderson had been there too, summoned by Hendricks, his expensive suit and practiced smile already starting to crack under Rook's methodical dissection of every misstep, every failure to act, every time the school had chosen money over morality. Then Rook's phone had buzzed. Diesel. Calling during church business, which meant emergency. Rook had answered with one word. What? The trail behind the baseball field. Now. It's Leo. Rook had stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. Is he hurt? Physically? Not sure yet. But Rook, he's non-responsive. And he's covered in mud like someone. Diesel's voice cracked. Like someone threw him in it. Rook had looked at Hendricks and Greg Henderson, his expression transforming from controlled lawyer mode to something far more dangerous. This conversation isn't over, he'd said quietly. Then, to Greg, if I find out your son did this, if I find out he put one finger on that kid, he'd left the threat unfinished and walked out, already calling the rest of the club. Now he stood at the edge of the muddy trail, looking at Leo. The boy was a ghost of himself, wrapped in Wrench's oversized leather vest, shaking violently from cold and shock. Eyes open but unseeing. His clothes were plastered with filth. His new sketchbook floated in pieces in the puddle behind him. Rook had seen combat, had seen soldiers in shock after IED attacks, civilians after bombings, prisoners after torture. He recognized trauma when he saw it. And something in his chest, some part of him that had died with his brother Danny, shattered and reformed into something harder, sharper, angrier. He knelt in the mud beside Leo, not caring that it soaked through his jeans. Sketch. It's Rook. Can you hear me? No response. We're going to get you warm. Get you safe. But first, I need to pick you up, okay? I'm going to lift you. It might be uncomfortable, but I need you to trust me. Still no response. But Leo didn't flinch when Rook slid his arms under the boy's back and knees, lifting him as easily as if he weighed nothing. The leather vest fell away, and Rook could see the full extent of it. Mud in Leo's hair, on his face, soaking through his clothes to the skin beneath. Shotgun, grab his backpack. Wrench, get his sketchbook, what's left of it. Diesel, you're with me. They moved as a unit, 15 years of riding together, translating into wordless coordination. Rook carried Leo to his bike, then faced a problem. Leo needed warmth and safety, not a motorcycle ride. Take my truck, Wrench said, already pulling keys from his pocket. It's warmer. You can get the heat going. 5 minutes later, Rook was driving Wrench's F-150 toward the hospital. Leo buckled into the passenger seat, still unresponsive, still shaking. Diesel followed on his bike, the rest of the crew spreading out to secure the scene and collect evidence. Sarah Anderson met them at the emergency room. She'd been working a shift when Rook called, and the look on her face when she saw her son, covered in filth, nonverbal, clearly in crisis, would haunt Rook for the rest of his life. What happened? Her voice was barely a whisper. Tyler Henderson happened, and this time, there's going to be consequences. The doctors checked Leo over while Sarah and Rook waited in a private room the nurse had provided as a courtesy to Sarah, who worked there and was well liked by her colleagues. No broken bones. No serious physical injuries. But the emotional damage, that was harder to quantify. He's in what we call a catatonic state, the doctor explained. It's a trauma response. His brain basically shut down to protect itself. He should come out of it in a few hours, but we want to keep him for observation. While Leo slept in a hospital bed, sedated slightly to help him rest, Rook made phone calls. First to a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. Marcus Webb, a former Marine JAG officer who specialized in disability discrimination cases and had a reputation for absolutely destroying schools and institutions that failed to protect vulnerable populations. Rook, it's been a while. Webb, I need your help. Pro bono if you can swing it, but I'll pay if you can't. For you? Always pro bono. What's the situation? Rook explained. Everything. The months of bullying, the destroyed artwork, the school's inaction, Greg Henderson's interference. And now, the ambush in the mud, the video evidence that almost certainly existed on Tyler's phone, the deliberate traumatizing of an autistic child. When he finished, there was a long silence. They fucked up, Webb said finally. School fucked up, the Henderson kid fucked up, and the father fucked up by enabling it. This is, Jesus, Rook. This is a civil rights attorney's dream case. ADA violations, hostile educational environment, failure to implement IEP protections, deliberate indifference to harassment based on disability. Can we bury them? We can bury them so deep they'll need archaeological equipment to find daylight. But I need evidence. Witnesses. Documentation. You'll have it. I've got brothers collecting everything right now. And Webb? I want criminal charges too. Assault. Harassment. Whatever sticks. On an 11-year-old? On a 12-year-old bully who keeps getting away with it because daddy has money. Yeah, I want him in juvenile court. I want it on his permanent record. I want him to understand that actions have consequences. Webb whistled low. You're going nuclear. They hurt my kid. They left him in the mud like trash. Yeah, I'm going nuclear. That evening, while Leo slept and Sarah sat by his bedside, Rook gathered the steel Spartans at the clubhouse. 15 men sat around the table in the main meeting room. Ages ranging from 28 to 63. Backgrounds as diverse as humanity offered. Mechanics, construction workers, a teacher, an accountant, 2 veterans, 1 cop. Off-duty and very carefully neutral about what was being discussed. Church is in session, Rook said, bringing his gavel down. We all know why we're here. Leo Anderson was assaulted today. Left in the mud like garbage by a punk kid who's been tormenting him for months. Around the table, jaws tightened. These were men who'd seen violence, who weren't strangers to conflict. But violence against children, against kids who couldn't defend themselves, against someone under their protection, that crossed every line. I've already got a lawyer involved, Rook continued. We're going legal, going hard, going for maximum damage to the school and to the Henderson family. But that's not why I called church. He looked around the table, meeting each man's eyes. I want to send a message. Not with fists, we're not criminals. But with presence. I want to remind everyone. The school, the Hendersons, every bully in that building. That Leo isn't alone. That he's got family. That you don't fuck with family. What did you have in mind? Wrench asked. Rook smiled, and it was the smile of a combat engineer who'd just figured out exactly where to place the charges. Wednesday morning. Leo goes back to school, and we're going to give him an escort he'll never forget. Leo woke up Tuesday morning in his own bed, clean and warm, with no memory of how he'd gotten there. The last thing he remembered clearly was Tyler's laughter and the cold mud, and then, nothing. A gap. Blank space where hours should have been. His mother explained gently. The hospital, the doctors, the sedatives that had helped him sleep. She didn't mention the word catatonic, because that would scare him, but Leo could fill in the blanks. His brain had shut down. He'd gone somewhere else. It had happened before, though never this severely. You don't have to go back, Sarah said, sitting on the edge of his bed. We can look at other schools. We can homeschool. We can. I want to go back. Leo's voice was quiet but firm. Honey, after what happened, if I don't go back, Tyler wins. He makes me leave, and he gets to stay, and he does it to someone else. Leo looked at his mother. Rook said I matter, that I'm under their protection. I believe him. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. You shouldn't have to be brave. You're 11. I'm 11 and autistic, and people think that makes me weak. But I'm not weak. I'm just different. He paused. And I'm not alone anymore. Which was how, at 7:30 a.m. on Wednesday morning, Leo found himself standing in his driveway wearing clean clothes, his emergency backup sketchbook in his backpack, and Rook's property of Steel Spartans MC patch carefully sewn onto his jacket by his mother's expert hand. The sound started as a distant rumble, like thunder, but rhythmic, purposeful. Leo's head turned toward the street. His mother stepped out of the house beside him, coffee mug in hand, her expression puzzled. The rumble grew louder. Then, around the corner, they appeared. Motorcycles. Not one, not two, but a formation of them, riding in perfect synchronized pairs. Heavy bikes, Harleys mostly, but also some Indians, a few custom builds, their chrome gleaming in the morning sun, their engines creating a symphony of controlled thunder. At the front, riding alone, Rook on his fat boy. The formation pulled into Leo's quiet suburban street, and neighbors began emerging from their houses, drawn by the noise and spectacle. The motorcycles filled the entire road, parking in two neat lines with military precision. 50 bikes. 50 riders. Leo's jaw dropped. He knew the Steel Spartans had maybe 20 regular members. Where had the other 30 come from? Rook dismounted and walked toward Leo, pulling off his helmet. Behind him, the other riders did the same, a coordinated movement that was frankly intimidating in its unity. Morning, sketch, Rook said casually, as if he hadn't just arrived with an army. Ready for school? Leo couldn't speak, could only stare. A figure emerged from one of the back bikes, a woman in her 50s with gray hair in a long braid, wearing a leather vest that said Valkyries MC. She walked up beside Rook. Leo, this is Red. She's president of the Valkyries, an all-women's club about an hour north of here. When I put out the call, she answered. Red nodded at Leo. Heard you needed some backup, little man. We don't take kindly to bullies. Another rider stepped forward, a massive black man who made even Rook look average-sized, wearing colors from Iron Phoenix MC. Name's Tank, president of Iron Phoenix. We're 3 towns over. Rook's good people, which makes you good people. One by one, presidents and representatives from motorcycle clubs Leo had never heard of introduced themselves. The Dead Men, the Night Riders, the Iron Wolves, Chrome Angels, Asphalt Saints. All of them had come. All of them had dropped their Wednesday morning plans to escort one 11-year-old autistic kid to school. How? Leo finally managed. How did you? We take care of our own, Rook said simply. And you're ours. Every single person here volunteered. Some of them drove 2 hours to be here this morning. You know what? Leo shook his head. Because every single person here has either been bullied, or has a kid who was bullied, or knows someone who needed help and didn't get it. We've all been where you are. And we decided a long time ago that when one of us needs backup, we show up. He held out a helmet. A smaller one, clearly borrowed or bought specifically for Leo. You're riding with me. Your mom's going to follow in her car, but you and me? We're leading this parade. Sarah had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Rook, I don't know how to. Don't thank me yet, ma'am. Thank me when this is over and Tyler Henderson has learned his lesson. Leo took the helmet with shaking hands. It fit perfectly. Rook lifted him onto the fat boy like he weighed nothing, settling him in front where he could hold onto the handlebars. Then Rook swung his leg over behind Leo, his massive arms bracketing the boy, making him feel completely safe. You okay? Rook's voice was gentle. Leo nodded. Then let's go show your school what family looks like. Rook kick-started the engine. Behind them, 49 other motorcycles roared to life in perfect unison, the sound so loud it set off car alarms 3 blocks away. And then they rode. The formation moved through town at exactly the speed limit. Perfectly legal, perfectly controlled. But the sight of it, 50 motorcycles in tight formation, riding with military precision, all heading toward Lincoln Middle School, stopped traffic. People pulled over to watch. Drivers held up phones to record. Leo held onto the handlebars, feeling the fat boy's engine vibrate through his entire body. Pattern loud, safe loud, the kind of controlled chaos that made sense to his brain. For the first time in months, he felt powerful. Lincoln Middle School's morning routine was clockwork predictable. Buses arrived between 7:45 and 8 a.m. Parents dropping off kids created a controlled chaos in the parking lot between 7:50 and 8:05. Students who walked or biked filtered in throughout that window. By 7:55 a.m., there were approximately 200 people in and around the school's front entrance. Students, parents, teachers preparing for the day, crossing guards managing traffic. At 7:57 a.m., they all heard it. The rumble started distant, almost subsonic. Some people looked around, confused, thinking maybe a storm was coming despite the clear sky. Others ignored it entirely, focused on their phones or conversations, or getting their kids to class on time. Principal Hendricks was in his office, reviewing the day's schedule. Greg Henderson was in the parking lot, having just dropped off Tyler with a reminder to stay out of trouble. Tyler himself was holding court near the front steps with Jake and Marcus, recounting Monday's prank on Leo to an audience of kids who laughed, because that's what you did when Tyler Henderson told a story. At 7:58 a.m., the rumble became unmistakable. Motorcycles. Lots of them. Getting closer. Tyler's story faltered. Heads began turning toward the street. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. At 7:59 a.m., the formation appeared. They came around the corner like something out of a movie. 50 motorcycles in perfect V formation, engines synchronized, chrome catching the morning sun and throwing it back in blinding flashes. The sound was enormous, overwhelming, a physical force that you felt in your chest and bones. At the front, easily visible, Rook on his fat boy with a small figure in front of him wearing a too large helmet. The formation didn't slow down, didn't stop at the parking lot entrance. They rode directly into the school's circular drive, technically reserved for buses, technically off-limits to other vehicles, and claimed it with the confidence of people who absolutely did not care about parking regulations. The motorcycles formed a perfect semicircle around the front steps, engines idling in perfect synchronization. The sound was like being inside a heartbeat, rhythmic and powerful and absolutely impossible to ignore. Tyler's face went pale. Greg Henderson, still standing near his Mercedes SUV, froze mid-step. Then Rook killed his engine. A beat later, all 49 other riders did the same. The sudden silence was almost louder than the engines had been. 50 riders dismounted in unison. 50 sets of boots hit pavement with a collective thud that sounded like a military formation. They stood beside their bikes, arms crossed, expressions neutral but posture radiating unmistakable menace. These weren't weekend warriors playing dress-up. These were people who'd lived hard lives, survived ugly things, and had zero patience for bullshit. Rook helped Leo down from the fat boy, removed his helmet, and placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. Then he looked directly at Tyler Henderson. The boy was standing on the front steps, surrounded by his usual crowd, but looking very, very small. "Leo," Rook said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent parking lot. "Do you see that kid up there? The tall one in the basketball jersey?" Leo nodded, not trusting his voice. "Is that Tyler? The one who's been making your life hell?" Another nod. Rook's expression didn't change. He simply gestured to the other riders. As one, they formed two lines creating a corridor from where Leo stood to the school's front entrance. A path of leather and chrome and barely contained fury. "Walk," Rook said quietly. "We've got you." Leo took a step forward. Then another. His legs felt like rubber, but the presence of the Steel Spartans and their allied clubs gave him strength. As he walked between the two lines of riders, each one he passed did something small but meaningful. Wrench gave him a gentle fist bump. Red nodded with a warrior's respect. Tank rumbled. "We got you, little man." Diesel touched his shoulder. Shotgun winked. 50 gestures of support. 50 silent promises that he wasn't alone. Tyler watched Leo approach, his earlier bravado evaporating with each step. Jake and Marcus had already backed away, suddenly very interested in their shoes. Principal Hendricks burst out of the school's front doors, his face red with indignation. "This is school property. You can't." "We can," said Marcus Webb, stepping forward. He wore a suit instead of leather. and he handed Hendricks a business card. Marcus Webb, attorney at law. I represent Leo Anderson and his mother in their civil rights complaint against this institution. You'll be hearing from me officially by end of business today. Hendricks's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Greg Henderson pushed through the crowd. This is intimidation. I'm calling the police. Please do, Webb said mildly. I'd love to explain to them how your son assaulted a disabled minor, filmed it, and distributed the video. That's multiple felonies in this state. Greg's certainty wavered. Leo reached the steps. Tyler was 3 feet away, and Leo could see it clearly now. Tyler wasn't tough. Tyler was scared. Without his father's money, without the school's protection, without the shield of institutional indifference, he was just a 12-year-old bully who'd finally met something bigger than himself. Leo didn't say anything. Didn't need to. He simply walked past Tyler into the school, his head high, the Steel Spartan's patch visible on his jacket. Rook waited until Leo disappeared into the school building. Then he turned to Tyler Henderson. The boy was still standing on the steps, trapped between the school entrance and 50 bikers, his face a mask of confused fear. Around him, students whispered and pointed. Parents held up phones, recording everything. Rook walked forward slowly, deliberately. Each step was measured, controlled, radiating the kind of authority that came from years of leading men in combat and on the road. He stopped directly in front of Tyler, close enough that the boy had to crane his neck back to maintain eye contact. Close enough to be intimidating without being physically threatening. Rook pulled off his sunglasses, folded them, put them in his vest pocket. The whole process took maybe 5 seconds, but those seconds felt like hours. Then he spoke, his voice quiet but carrying across the silent parking lot. Tyler Henderson. Tyler's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I'm going to say this once, and you're going to listen very carefully. Are you listening? Tyler nodded frantically. Leo Anderson is under the protection of the Steel Spartans Motorcycle Club and our allied organizations. You know what that means? Tyler shook his head. It means if you touch him, threaten him, talk about him, even look at him wrong, you're not dealing with an 11-year-old autistic kid anymore. You're dealing with us. All of us. Rook gestured to the assembled riders. 50 faces stared back at Tyler with expressions ranging from cold fury to barely contained rage. You think your daddy's money protects you? Rook continued. You think being on the school board means anything to us? Kid, we don't care about your dad's BMW or your basketball shoes or how popular you think you are. We care about protecting people who can't protect themselves. And we're very, very good at it. Tyler's lower lip trembled. The crowd of students around him had grown. Word had spread through the school, and now hundreds of kids pressed against the windows and filled the doorways, watching the school bully get a lesson in humility. But here's the thing, Rook said, his voice softening slightly. I'm not going to hurt you. None of us are. Because unlike you, we don't punch down. We don't terrorize people weaker than us. We don't throw kids in the mud for fun. He leaned forward slightly. Tyler leaned back. But make no mistake, if you ever go near Leo again, I will make it my personal mission to ensure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are. The videos you took, the artwork you destroyed, the months of harassment, all of it documented, all of it ready for the police, the media, the court system. Tyler's face had gone from pale to green. His hands shook. Your father taught you that money fixes everything, Rook said. That being rich means being untouchable. Let me teach you something different. There are lines you don't cross. And when you cross them, when you hurt people under our protection, all the money in the world won't save you from consequences. He straightened up, putting his sunglasses back on. We clear. Tyler tried to speak, but couldn't. His throat had locked up, his voice had fled, and for the first time in his life, he understood what it felt like to be Leo. Powerless, voiceless, completely at someone else's mercy. He managed a jerky nod. Good. Rook turned to the assembled crowd, students, teachers, parents. His voice rose. That goes for everyone. Leo Anderson is off limits. Permanently. Anyone has a problem with that, you know where to find us. He walked back to his motorcycle. The other riders mounted up in perfect synchronization. 50 engines roared to life. And Tyler Henderson, still standing frozen on the steps, finally understood what Leo had been trying to tell him all along. Strength wasn't about size or money or popularity. It was about having people who stood beside you when the world got dark. Tyler had none of those people. Leo had 50. The motorcycles pulled out of the school parking lot in the same formation they'd arrived in, disappearing down the street with a thunder that would echo in Lincoln Middle School's collective memory for years. In his office, Principal Hendricks stared at the business card Marcus Webb had handed him, already composing the very uncomfortable call he'd need to make to the school district's superintendent. In the parking lot, Greg Henderson stood beside his Mercedes, his phone in hand, his lawyer's number pulled up, but the call not yet made because what exactly would he say? My son assaulted a disabled kid, and now his motorcycle club showed up to protect him? And on the front steps of the school, Tyler Henderson stood frozen, staring at the empty street where the motorcycles had been, his pants slightly damp from where he'd lost control of his bladder in the moment Rook had leaned in close. Jake and Marcus had disappeared. His other friends had melted away. For the first time in his life, Tyler was alone. Inside the school, Leo sat in his first period class, his hands still shaking from adrenaline, but his heart full of something he'd never quite felt before. Pride. Not in what he'd done, he'd just walked, just existed, just refused to disappear. But pride in his family, in the 50 riders who'd given up their morning to escort one weird kid to school, in Rook, who'd kept his promise to protect, in the Steel Spartans, who'd shown him that family wasn't about blood, it was about who stood beside you when the world tried to knock you down. His teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, the same one who'd blamed him for Tyler's harassment weeks ago, approached his desk carefully. Leo, are you okay? Leo looked up at her and smiled. A genuine, full smile that showed teeth and reached his eyes. I'm perfect, he said clearly. I'm absolutely perfect. And for the first time in his 11 years, he actually meant it. 3 months later, the Steel Spartans garage had become Leo's second home in ways that went beyond just Saturday visits. Rook had cleared out a corner of the space, near the windows for good light, away from the loudest machinery, and set up what he called Leo's design studio. It consisted of a proper drafting table, donated by Danny the accountant, who apparently had one gathering dust in his basement, a rolling tool chest repurposed for art supplies, courtesy of Wrench, and a custom-built bulletin board where Leo could pin his sketches, built by T-Bone, who turned out to be surprisingly good at woodworking. Today, Leo sat at his table, working on a commission. His first real commission, actually, paid work, treated like a professional. How's it coming? Shotgun peered over Leo's shoulder at the design, taking shape on the paper. The drawing showed a custom motorcycle build, a cafe racer-style frame with modern components, retro styling, and paint specs noted in the margins. It was for a client of Wrench's who'd seen Leo's artwork and asked if the kid could design something unique. Good, Leo said, adding shading to the fuel tank. I'm thinking the tank should be candy apple red with gold leaf pinstriping. Classic, but not boring. Kid's got an eye, Wrench called from across the garage where he was working on an oil change. Better than half the custom shops in the state. Leo allowed himself a small smile. Compliments still felt strange, but he was learning to accept them. Learning that praise didn't always come with a catch. The past 3 months had been transformative. The lawsuit Marcus Webb had filed on behalf of Leo, and Sarah had settled out of court. Lincoln Middle School had agreed to a comprehensive anti-bullying program, mandatory staff training on disability awareness, and a substantial financial settlement that Sarah had immediately put into a college fund for Leo. Tyler Henderson had been transferred to a private school in the next county, his father's choice, made before the juvenile court case could proceed. The video of the mud incident had been deleted from Jake's phone as part of the settlement, but the damage to Tyler's reputation was permanent. Word had spread. Tyler was that kid who bullied the disabled boy and got confronted by bikers. Greg Henderson had resigned from the school board. Quietly, without fanfare, but everyone knew why. More importantly, the culture at Lincoln Middle School had shifted. Leo wasn't invisible anymore. He wasn't the weird kid people avoided. He was the kid with the biker family, and messing with him meant potential visits from men who made even the toughest 8th graders nervous. But it went deeper than fear. Other kids, the quiet ones, the different ones, the ones who didn't quite fit, had started gravitating toward Leo at lunch. A girl with severe dyslexia who'd been called stupid. A boy with Tourette's whose tics made him a target. A kid in a wheelchair who'd been accidentally bumped into one too many times. Leo had found his tribe, and together, they'd found their voice. Sketch, you got visitors. Rook called from the garage entrance. Leo looked up to see Sarah enter, followed by two people he didn't recognize. A man and woman in their 30s, both dressed casually, both looking around the garage with expressions of awe. Leo, Sarah said, her voice warm with pride. These are the Thompsons. They saw the article about you in the newspaper and wanted to meet you. The article? Right. The local paper had run a feature. Motorcycle Club protects autistic student from bullying. It had gone viral online, been picked up by state news, even gotten a mention on a national morning show. Leo hadn't understood what the fuss was about. Rook had just done what he said he'd do, but apparently people thought it was newsworthy. Mr. Thompson extended his hand. Our son, Marcus, is 7. He has autism. Nonverbal mostly. And he's starting to get bullied at school, and we didn't know what to do. Then we saw your story, and we thought. He trailed off, looking emotional. Mrs. Thompson picked up. We thought maybe you could tell us how you found people who understood, who protected you. Because we're trying, but we're just two parents and the school doesn't listen and you need family, Leo said simply. The Thompsons blinked. What? Leo gestured around the garage. This isn't about motorcycles. I mean, it is, but it isn't. It's about finding people who see you. Really see you. Not the disability, not the weird stuff, not the things that make you different. They see you. Rook walked over, wiping his hands on a rag. What the kid's trying to say is, you can't fight bullies alone. The system's broken. Schools protect themselves, not students. So you build your own system, your own support network. We're not bikers, Mr. Thompson said helplessly. We don't know anything about motorcycles. Doesn't matter, Wrench chimed in. Find your community. Church group, sports league, parent support network, whatever. Find people who've been there, who get it, who'll stand with you. Then you let the bullies know, you touch this kid, you're dealing with all of us. Sarah smiled. He's right. I spent 2 years trying to fight the school alone. I was exhausted and getting nowhere. Then Rook and the club stepped in, and suddenly the school cared because they realized Leo had people, resources, backing. Red walked in from outside, pulling off her riding gloves. She'd started coming by regularly, mentoring Leo on design principles and telling him stories about customizing bikes in a male-dominated industry. You'd be surprised how many of us have kids on the spectrum, or partners, or siblings. Disabilities don't discriminate. They hit every community. You just need to find yours. The Thompsons stayed for an hour, taking notes, asking questions, getting phone numbers for disability advocacy groups, parent support networks, and lawyers who specialized in educational discrimination. As they left, Mrs. Thompson hugged Leo, a gesture he tolerated because he was getting better at accepting physical affection from people he trusted. Thank you, she whispered. You gave us hope. After they left, Leo returned to his design work. But before he could pick up his pencil, Rook sat down beside him. You know what you did just now? Rook asked. Talk to some people? You gave that family something powerful. You showed them they're not alone. Rook paused. My brother Danny, he died thinking he didn't matter, thinking nobody cared. I've spent 15 years trying to make sure no other kid ever feels that way. But I'm one person. I can't be everywhere. He pointed to Leo's artwork. But you've got a gift. Not just the drawing, though that's pretty damn impressive. You've got the gift of survival, of finding light in dark places, of showing other people how to do the same. Leo considered that. Is that why you do this? The club, the protecting kids, all of it? Because of Danny, partly, but also because it's the right thing to do. Rook looked around the garage at his brothers, working on their bikes, living their lives, being themselves without apology. The world tries to tell some people they don't matter, that they're too different, too weird, too much trouble. I made a choice a long time ago to tell those people the world is wrong. You matter. Your differences matter. And anyone who tries to hurt you because of those differences will answer to me. He stood up, ruffled Leo's hair. Leo had learned to tolerate that too. Finish your design. Clients coming by Friday to approve it. Rook? Yeah. Thank you. For everything. For being you. Rook's expression softened. Thank you for being you, Sketch. World needs more people like you. That evening, Leo sat in his bedroom at home, looking at the patch on his jacket. Property of Steel Spartans, MC. He'd earned the right to wear it, though he'd never ride a motorcycle as a full member. Earned it not through some test of toughness or masculinity, but simply by being himself. On his desk sat his latest drawing, A massive steel lion standing guard over a smaller figure, a lamb, maybe, or a child. The lion's expression was fierce but protective, its mane flowing like flames, its eyes watchful. Behind the lion stood an army of other figures, smaller but just as vigilant. All different, all unique, all united by a single purpose, protection. Leo had titled it Family. He signed it in the bottom corner. Not Leo Anderson, but his road name. The one Rook had given him, Sketch. Then he started a new drawing. This one showed a workshop filled with people of all ages, all abilities, all backgrounds, all working together on a massive motorcycle. A community build, each person contributing their unique skills. In the center stood a small figure wearing a patch that read, Steel Spartans. The figure was smiling. 5 years later, Leo Anderson stood in the Steel Spartans garage, now expanded to twice its original size, presenting his senior thesis project to a panel of college admissions officers. At 16, he'd already been accepted to 3 prestigious design schools. But today's presentation wasn't about getting into college. It was about showing what he'd built. The project, a fully functional custom motorcycle, designed entirely by Leo, built with the help of the Steel Spartans over the course of 2 years. Every component had been carefully selected, every measurement precise, every weld perfect. But more impressive than the bike itself was the program Leo had created around it. The Different Gears Initiative, Leo explained to the admissions officers, his voice clear and confident in ways it never had been at 11, is a mentorship program that pairs neurodivergent teenagers with skilled tradespeople. We teach them mechanical skills, yes, but more importantly, we teach them that different doesn't mean less. He gestured to the workshop where 5 teenagers, 2 with autism, 1 with ADHD, 1 with dyslexia, 1 with cerebral palsy, worked on various projects under the watchful eyes of Steel Spartans members. We've expanded to 3 locations across the state. We've helped 27 kids find their passion. And we've shown them that no matter who they are, no matter what challenges they face, they have family. They have us. Rook stood in the back of the room, arms crossed, beard now shot through with more gray than brown, but eyes still sharp. Beside him stood Sarah Anderson, no longer the exhausted single mother, but a confident woman who'd gone back to school and gotten her nursing degree, now working as a pediatric nurse specializing in special needs children. The admissions officers asked questions. Leo answered them all. When they left, the lead officer, a woman from MIT, shook Leo's hand. You'll be hearing from us very soon, Mr. Anderson. Very soon. After they left, Leo walked over to Rook and Sarah. How'd I do? You crushed it, Sarah said, pulling him into a hug. Rook just nodded, but the pride in his eyes said everything. Later, as the sun set and the garage slowly emptied, Leo sat on his custom-built motorcycle, the one from his thesis, a perfect blend of vintage styling and modern engineering, and looked around at the space that had become his sanctuary. On the wall hung a photograph, 50 motorcycles in perfect formation outside Lincoln Middle School. Below it, a quote Leo had written. Strength isn't about being the biggest or the loudest. It's about standing together. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. It's about choosing every single day not to punch down. Rook walked over, 2 bottles of root beer in hand. He handed one to Leo. To family, Rook said, raising his bottle. To family, Leo echoed. They clinked bottles and drank, watching the sunset paint the garage in shades of orange and gold. And somewhere across town, Tyler Henderson, now 17 and attending a different school, working on a court-mandated community service project, slowly learning to be a better person through months of therapy and accountability, saw the news article about Leo's program and felt something he hadn't felt in 5 years. Regret. Real regret. He picked up his phone, typed out a message. I'm sorry. For everything. I hope you're doing well. He almost deleted it. Almost chickened out. Then he pressed send. Leo's phone buzzed. He looked at the message, showed it to Rook. You gonna respond? Rook asked. Leo thought about it. Thought about the 11-year-old boy who'd been broken in the mud. Thought about the 16-year-old he'd become, stronger, wiser, surrounded by family. Yeah, Leo said. I think I will. He typed. I'm doing great. Hope you are too. It's never too late to change. Because that was the final lesson the Steel Spartans had taught him. Strength wasn't just about protection. It was also about grace. About giving people the chance to be better, even when they didn't deserve it. The motorcycle engines of the departing brothers rumbled in the distance. Leo finished his root beer, started sketching his next design, and smiled. He was different. He'd always be different. And that was exactly as it should be.